And there's also creative nonfiction, which is a popular thing to do, which is kind of what I probably do. I throw in the sarcasm and when I'm writing, but be yourself. I would recommend to be a, or you can emulate somebody, read, definitely take time to read because that will trigger ideas in your thoughts. And then when you have those, you've got to jot them down. And I do that if I'm watching something, even on TV, like sometimes I watch, not Jimmy Fallon, but something like that, for example. They'll have a guest on, they'll say something really cool. I'm like, I'll write that down as something I can follow up later because otherwise you'll forget it, especially in my chapter in life. But it's important to be you, read and just, I get ideas. I've learned, find an area, an environment where you're going to be able to do this work. It is work, but you have to make time for it. And you can try different times of the day if you want to write. You can be in different environments. I have to be alone because I will get distracted, right? If people are barking, but my dogs can lay next to me. but I'm just but I just get an energy get great ideas from just a walk in the woods. I get great ideas. Then that's when that motivates me. Reading is what can inspire and motivate you as well. So everybody's a little different, but what do you want to write about? And then it doesn't have to be 1,000 words a day, right? Just a little bit. Could be 5 minutes, David. And then if you want to record yourself, even better. So there's so many options now.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have not only an author, which is a big feat in itself, but also a podcaster, which makes me happy, which is so great. We have both combined into one amazing episode. So I'm excited to have Brigitte on the podcast. Her podcast is RealThings Living. You have to go check it out. Links in the show notes. Go and listen to a great podcast. It is spectacular. And she's here to talk about her author journey. We'll throw in some podcast chat as well, but excited to have Brigitte on the podcast. Brigitte, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you so much, David. I'm so glad we connected, fellow podcasters.
Right? We're not even in the same country, which is awesome. So let everybody know where you are in this big world of ours.
I live in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. When people ask me where I live, I just say Atlanta because Atlanta is a huge area now. Just like people live in New York, right? People think you're downtown. I'm not downtown Atlanta, but I love this area of the country because it is near, people don't realize, the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains. Mm. And I'm not too far from a lake. I live by a lake. I live close to Chattanooga. I just like to explore it. I think that's just something that just helps you understand what's all around you. But we also, if you want to go to the beach, the real beach, meaning the ocean, you got to drive maybe 3 or 4 hours, which is not really a big deal.
No.
Right.
That's good. Awesome. So you have a little bit of everything.
That's why I think that's why this area is popular, because we're the access to all these things.
Beautiful. I love it. And that's one of the things I love doing about podcasting is I get to travel virtually around the world and hear about great places that I've never been yet. So they're on my list. My list is growing every time I do an episode. I'm like, oh, I got to go there. That sounds amazing. So
it's fun to see different parts of the world and different perspectives. And that's why I think being curious I shouldn't say age, excuse me, being curious is important in life.
I'm not aging. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not aging. No, yes, I am. So on top of everything else you got going on, you're an author with multiple books out in the world, which is amazing. What was that initial point for you that you're like, you know what, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to write. I'm going to become an author. Something had happened there to make you make that decision. What was it?
Yeah, that's a great, I'm one of those people who always wanted to be perfect from that, it has to be perfect before you get it out there. And I was afraid to do it. And my background is working in the publishing world, which is hilarious. But I had cancer a couple of times And then actually this year, David, is my 10-year anniversary and
Wow.
of the last cancer, which is great.
Amazing.
And I give it the middle finger. But anyway, but screw you.
Yeah.
But it was that moment, that last moment when it came back, it was aggressive. And it was my sons were the ones that convinced me, Mom, you're a really good writer. You like to write. Why don't you? And there was them, my sons. And then I'm like, you know what? They're right. Life, you realize when you have come up across obstacles like cancer, life is short. Do it, right? And that's kind of what after that last cancer, the surgeries and the chemo and all that stuff. And that's when I decided to start writing. And I had a blog I started a few years ago, again, by my sons recommending it. And I had a theme with what I was writing about. And that's what I'm like, I have all this content already. And so I put it all together and I had it edited, obviously. But I made it not just words on paper. I had some visuals added, pictures, and people liked it because it was about embracing life. It's called RealThings, 6 Ways to Embrace Life. And that was just a reminder to people. We got only so much time. Right? Time is limited. That's really what it's about. And I always focus on things, mean not physical things, but experiences. I was just kind of being sarcastic with the word things. And that's what it was. It was like, holy cow, I only have so much time left. And my sons knew it made me happy, and it did. And David, I didn't know when we last talked, I was invited to present my book at the Lincoln Jazz Center in New York City. That was right. And it was
Wow.
me. It was because after all that, I went and did some health coach not training, but like nutrition. Just it was part of healing. You've got to make some changes to your life, and they liked it. So I presented it up there, which is one of the best experiences I ever had because I never thought I would be up there, in New York City, which is in my brain the capital of publishing. Right? That's just how I saw it, and then I made a bunch of extra copies. I didn't make them, excuse me. I had extra copies printed, and I dropped them off at the chemo pod. I call it a chemo pod, where I had at the hospital to help all these other people who are going through cancer, just to give them some hope. And some people find that word cheesy, but I don't. You got to have some positivity to get through things. And made them happy, right? And that's really what it was about. That's how I started. It was from a blog, and I didn't realize I had all this theme with it, the way I wrote, right? It's the way I was writing.
So, okay, so what kind of things, when you were going through the treatments in hospital and all that and all the care, there's a lot of downtime, right, when you're going through all these treatments.
Yes.
What kind of things were there to help inspire you? Was there a book sitting on the desk? Like, what was there?
I would read a lot, and my dogs, I'm a big dog lover. I love dogs. Okay. And I had two, one was a Great Pyrenees. They just helped me. They knew. Dogs, they're very intuitive, and they knew I had surgery, and they're sniffing me and making sure I was there, and just having them around. And obviously going through chemo you're more tired. So that's probably why I had more time to just do nothing. You had to relax. Right. And I didn't really watch much TV. I was reading, and I would do short walks. And my husband took me out during the warmer weather on our boat to watch the sunset every night, because that's what it was, just like, wow. So my husband was a huge supporter too. And then my sons, right before the surgery that I had on my 49th birthday, I had my surgery on my birthday. I know that sounds weird, but I did it on purpose as a restart. But my sons know how much running means to me. So they ran a race with me 2 weeks before. They're obviously a lot younger. They stayed with me the whole time. But what they know, but that just showed the love that they had. And then at the end, it was just a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. People don't know. And at the end, my husband was waiting for us with the dogs cheering us on. And it was just created some great memories. And then I knew I wouldn't be able to, when I could run again. And that's kind of why I did that experience with them. And it took about over a year later for me to be able to run again because you know, got to heal and have physical therapy and the energy. And you got to be respectful of listening to your body. But I just took things a little bit slower, if that makes sense. And I've always loved to cook. I was cooking. I mean, I've always liked it. So that's something I write about in my first book. I have some recipes in there. People are like, what? Because I joke that I Bridgetize recipes because you got to make it the way it's good for my taste buds. But people, you got to switch it out. And one thing that I've noticed, some of those recipes that are out there, way too much like sugar. I'm sorry, but that's not good for you if you've had cancer. You've got to be careful with, it's true. And it's just the way it is. But that's what it was. I spent more time just being in the moment, my dogs and sunset and my family and reading. And I did not, and that amazing, I did not watch TV because that's just temporary entertainment. That's how I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But as you're healing from cancer, no, you focus on what's in front of you and reading a book and getting some great ideas from reading a book as well for other writing.
So, okay, where did the podcast come into all of this?
Podcast is an offshoot of that first book, RealThings, 6 Ways to Embrace Life. And then RealThings Living happened. I blame it on Seth Godin because I've always followed his newsletter. Is that what you call it? Or blog? I'm not sure. Whatever, means the same thing. But I thought I liked the way he wrote. It was to the point and it wasn't pushing stuff all the time. And then he mentioned podcasts, and that's when I think I started mine in 2019, and podcasts started growing in that era, right? My cancer was 2014, but I didn't start the podcast almost 4 or 5 years later. But I was just the nudge that I got from reading his stuff. And then I joined his podcast fellowship, which was online. And that's, I think, thankful to Zoom, right? Zoom. And I learned about how to do all the basics. We wasn't telling you how to do a podcast. It was just like you got to have the right equipment and, and use your personality in it, being authentic. And I did meet a great guy here in Atlanta. He has forgot what it's called, but it's a very popular business podcast here in Atlanta. He had me on his podcast here in Atlanta to talk about my business because he was just a kind person. And I met him through Seth Godin. Oh, it's Atlanta. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't think of it. Yeah. But it was just like, he was so kind. That's how it is. Podcasters are kind. He has a studio because he has a lot of people come to his studio to record. And he is doing, I think, producing stuff for people too, not just recording his thing. But that just opened my eyes. So, wow, it's more than just writing, Brigitte, and reading. Talking and communicating is apparently, both of us have a great skill set. Mm-hmm. And as you realize your next chapter, use those skills and apply them to help other people. And that's what I think is important.
There's a connection between a listener and a podcaster and hearing a guest on your show or whatever. There's a really personal connection that happens as a listener that I think it can be duplicated as an author as well when you're like one-on-one with a reader. That's amazing. Just another additional thing we can do to reach an audience and also then promote our books and a nice connection between the two, right?
Right. I never thought in a million years I'd have a podcast, but then Seth convinced me because he talked about it. And I met other people who were so excited to learn this. It's a skill. But we were growing that skill. And I'm a natural, my background in business is in business development. So, I had to go do a lot of speaking, a lot of just talking, but I never was recording it. And that's what I think people want to, they want to connect with others. And I've never been about having millions and millions of followers. It doesn't bother. I don't care because of what I've been through, especially we're just here to help and create a ripple effect.
Nice.
Is it the right word? Ripple effect.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just do that. And if one person listens, great. One person buys the book, great. Obviously, we want many people to buy your book.
Yes.
That's the point of doing a book.
Yes.
But if one person finds value in that, that's meaningful as well.
Yes, it is. And then they'll share it. But and by the way, David, I didn't mention earlier when my first book came out, I had an editor do it. And then I had someone I met, Rue, again, Seth Godin, it's all his fault. She's like a VP now at Penguin Random House. She wanted to read my book and edit it. I'm like, oh, it's fake. It's fake. I was just mortified because I mentioned earlier, I have this thing about perfectionism. She says, no, I'm going to look at it and give you some feedback. I'm like, okay. And she had a few tweaks. She said, it was great. She said she liked I'm like, wow. And I needed someone like her, because especially those that are, I shouldn't call her, she's in the business, real business that makes some money for it. Yeah. She thought it was really, gave me some great feedback. So that she liked the idea. I think more people are doing it, David, not just me. They're adding more images to books, right? It's just connecting. It's another way. It's a visual communication and not just I call it ink on paper. Whereas everybody prefers or different ways to read something. I prefer a physical book rather than reading it on a iPad, even though I have the iPad. I can't finish it. I don't know what it is. But if it's in my hand, maybe that's just how we were raised. Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
But that picture's worth 1,000 words, saying, right?
It's right.
It's nice.
But I thought it added more meaning. People liked it because I made it kind of funny. And I did put some quotes in there for my first book. First quote, but I would give credit to wherever the quote came from. I didn't want to. And that was when I had to have some help too I didn't understand social media either because I'm not from the generation. And I had to have some help putting it out there on social media because I'm like, what? Because I was more like LinkedIn stuff because I'm more business to business.
Yeah.
And after the cancer stuff, I've been doing my own thing, David, right? I'm trying to help people where I can and sharing the stories. And I just really appreciate meeting and connecting with people we never would have connected with. And thank God for Zoom. I think that is a great tool.
Yeah, it's excellent. There's so many great things out there. And I think we can be more connected with each other if we use the tools right.
Yes.
I think that sometimes social media actually disconnects us because even though we can see everyone's stuff, we give the occasional heart or like or thumbs up, and we're not really connecting. We're just kind of passing each other on the street online, right?
Yeah. And I don't. I have an Instagram, but I don't like scroll. I open it and then I'll shut it down. And so if something pops up, okay, I'll look at it. But I'm not a scroller, thank God. But I think I notice some people are, and I guess the Instagram knows what I like to look at. Dogs. Because that's it. Pros and cons of that. But I'll look at anything. I'm just animals. How's that? And I'm embracing that in this chapter of life. And it's always something that's I always believe in, you have to do hard work. But you also need to make sure you're something that you're going to enjoy in the long run. Right.
So take us through all of the books that you've written so far. Let's talk about those so we can promote the entire library.
Oh, perfect.
Right? Let's do that.
Well, the second book was totally unexpected. It's called Expecting the Good, Inspiration from a Badass with a Big Heart. And it's about my stepfather. And he died unexpectedly 2 years after I had cancer. But he really was a badass. That's what my sons called him and all the other grandchildren. He wasn't, because he was a West Pointer, he was Special Forces, he was a Ranger, he was a PSYOPs commander, and he was always, when I first met him, I think I was 16 after my parents got divorced. I had an attitude and I And like, I'm sorry, but he was always so kind because he knew he had some empathy, obviously. That's why he was a good officer, right? But he helped my mom, right? She's not from the US, by the way. And he's one of those that, Bridget, you're a girl, you can do anything you want. And I needed that. And then, say with my mom, he ended up convincing her she got her master's and her PhD, David, because she's that. But being in the not a American citizen, it was just harder for her to get, especially she didn't have a good, she had a very strong French accent. But I wrote this because I saw how much he helped so many people at his funeral and his Benny's wake. I know you're familiar with what a Benny's wake is.
No, tell me more.
It's through the West Pointers. They all gather and they share funny stories after the funeral of what these people do. And I learned so much about him and how kind he was to everybody, David. And even in the military, and they shared some funny stories. And I was like, I got to share this because I was recording it so I can and then I did ask for permission to share more stories with him. And then I got connected to West Point, and I'm like, I'm writing this book about my stepfather. And they're like, come on up. So I got a personal tour, David, not just because that shows you how much of an impact he had. And it's amazing that, yesterday was Memorial Day here in the United States. He came back alive after all these things that he did. So that's amazing. And he was just, again, I had to share what these people like him do. And me, I didn't appreciate being an Army brat. Okay. I mean, I grew up, I was born in like Fort Knox, Kentucky, because my father brought my mom over as an American soldier, but I didn't appreciate it either. And again, it's another reflection. Unexpected stuff happens. And this supposedly, super in health guy, he had a heart attack at home. But that's what can happen. And again, he always told us to expect, look, you got to acknowledge the bad, but expect something good to come out of it. And that's why he was a good, I think, role model for the community, for everybody he worked with, and especially us. And that's why I had to write that book. And that's actually the most popular book I wrote because I wrote it from a girl's perspective about this hard, badass man, but how I just learned so much good stuff from them.
Good.
From these other guys. And they were just nothing but funny stories, but good things to say about it. I can't believe how wild he was, David. It's just, when he was younger, it's like, whoa, okay. But that's how most people are when they're younger. But then the next book I wrote was about my business. That was called Quality Book Formula. Because someone's like, Bridget, you should share this knowledge because I've been in the business over 30 years, pushing 40, holy cow. But things have changed a lot in every industry. But I wanted people, because there's such easier access now to publish and self-publishing. I saw a lot of boo-boos out there.
Yeah.
It needs to be in line with as you know, the marketing and the brands stuff. And people were just randomly putting things out there. And Amazon has improved their quality if you're going to choose Amazon. And that's because they're outsourcing to real book printers now. Anyway, so I wrote this book called Quality Book Formula. I was just trying to here it is. It's called How to Professionally Publish Your Book for Excellence. I was being funny because I mentioned Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, because I like cheesy stuff. I always try to throw in humor in there. Because, and I made it kind of old school. I hired a designer, to make kind of old school. Because back in the day, most books when they were originally published, were hardcover and they had like foil stamping on it and stuff like that. But I grew up in that environment and I worked in that environment, and now it's just changed rapidly. So I just wanted to give people a little guide from someone who's been in the business a long time. And I actually worked for Heidelberg. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
They invented the printing press, and they had me as one of their product managers in North America. And I don't remember going to Canada, maybe only one time for them, but I did have to go all over the United States and in Germany. But I was more of a helping people understand. That's where the quality ID came from, because they were really pushing that. So I had to talk about that a lot too. And so I really appreciate that experience. And they trusted. And I think it's funny because when I was hired, I was the only girl in the United States or North America that wasn't the secretary. But I think it's because of my upbringing. Like I mentioned earlier, being a military brat, and my stepfather telling me, you're a girl, it doesn't matter, you can do anything you want. So I had that positive feedback, and it didn't hold me back on some things, right? And then the next book, I did a children's book called It's Fun to Run. And it's because I did it. My niece always wanted to be like me. She's like, why does Aunt Bridget run all the time? Right. And so it's a children's book. And I made sure it had her not alone outside running. Okay. Because people talk a lot about that. And that's a different story. But she always had someone with her and a dog. And that's kind of how I grew up. But I wanted people to see that running can be fun. If people think it's tough, you don't have to be out there about your speed, but I try to make it fun. And I did it because I saw a lot of kids were depressed kind of during COVID. And my sister is a teacher, and she was sharing lots of stories with me. And that I just wanted to make it more upbeat for them. And then I also did a coloring journal, which is called RealThings Living Coloring Journal. And the subtitle is Add More Color to Your Life. And that again had to do with COVID. I saw so many people just were not themselves. And I was a regular Starbucks customer, and I saw those baristas really sad. And that's where I got the idea from. And so I give those out for free, David, just because, and people are, it's almost like a way of meditating, but you're focused in coloring. I didn't do the art, but I picked out the pictures that I wanted, if that makes sense. It was my idea. And so it's more like a journal, and on the one page you can journal and then you can color.
That's awesome.
But I just wanted to make people be more, I just saw so much stress. And I'm sure it's the same thing in Canada. People are just, so I just try to make something fun for them. And that's something that I give out as a gift to people. And I have it in coil bound, which has got the coil on there, which is easier to work with. Or you can also get it perfect bound version. I also gave a whole bunch of them to the school that my teacher teaches at, because the kids are trying to get back. They had to work, go to school, and they didn't know what they were doing. A lot of them lost out, and they were all, again, a lot of stress all over the place. That's why I'm like, I'm not going to make people buy this book. You can buy it if you want, but I give it out I get so much positive feedback because I'm helping that person. Like, oh, wow, this is cool. And then, like, how popular journals are, but people were more inclined to this coloring journal because they can color. And then I remind them, write down what you're thinking after you color this page.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't, it doesn't have to be what your thoughts are about your life. What are you thinking about? Write about a tree or whatever it is. And that's kind of what it is. It's just to make people heal them a little bit. And then the last book I did, which came out last year, is called Move for You, Empowering a Healthy, Happy Life, right, through movement or exercise, excuse me. And because people ask me why I still run, and I'm going to be 59 next week, but I had to share that. Because I do it running because I like it. I'm not a marathoner. I know I had the opportunity to do it as a college student, to be on a team, for a scholarship. And I said no, because my instincts told me, you're not going to enjoy it anymore. I didn't want to be a professional about it. Yeah. I just wanted to enjoy it. I've tried different things in the book. I say you got to find your thing. And of course, I have the first section I talk about, the running aspect. But you got to just you can just, any kind of movement. You just got to get up off your butt. Sorry. And gardening is one. People like to bike. Good for them. People like to swim. It's just a reminder how important it is to move, because it helped. Again, I use my story and other cancer survivor stories, how movement really helped us heal physically and mentally. And that is maybe that's why I like running, because I get, I get those happy feeling afterwards. I'm not somebody that, like I said, runs marathons. I'll go do 3 miles, 6 miles at the max. My sweet spot is probably 4, but I do hike a lot, right? And just being out in nature. Some people prefer to do it on a treadmill. Go for it, right?
Yeah.
Bridget doesn't want to. I have a treadmill, but I got rid of it. Excuse me, I had one. I got rid of it because I wasn't using it. It was just taking up space, and I gave it away, right? Some people would sell it, but whatever. I gave it away. And that's what it is. It's got move for you, because again, it's an offshoot of all this theme here, making you happier while you're here in life. People say we talk about being happy too much, but whatever. I think they're Debbie Downers. You know who Debbie Downer is? Maybe I should use the word fun, but it's in the moment. It's just finding some joy in the moment, and that's really the theme behind all my books. And even the quality book formula, I throw in humor in there, like Bill and Ted, right? Because it just need to. Don't make it so tedious, then you're not going to complete something. And don't be like me and wait until you're 50 to read your first book.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. I was actually older than 50. I was 51. But I waited because, why? And because we take our time here on this planet, right, for granted. And that's something... Right. I mean, if you want to work hard and hustle, good for you. That's what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like to work hard too, but then I like to throw in, like I mentioned, the runs and being outside with my dogs, with my husband. And I joke that he tolerates my habit of running. But he's a hockey player, so I tolerate that, David. So anyway.
Come on. Yeah. And when I hear hockey and I'm in Canada... You mentioned a name that made me sit up straight when we had our pre-interview chat.
Yeah.
Someone that you guys have a connection to, and I know that the Canadians listening to this would love to hear a little bit about that connection and that story. But you have a connection with someone who has played hockey in the past, someone who's quite famous in Montreal area.
Who is it?
Patrick, somebody.
Patrick Waugh.
Yeah.
Well, I met his son.
There you go.
Jonathan Waugh, because again, one of the things I talk about in my books is music. That's something that makes me happy. And I discovered Jonathan, because I was cooking. All right. And I had music playing, and I think I had it on YouTube, music playlist, and YouTube was recommending Jonathan Waugh, and I heard it, and so I had to stop what I was doing, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I looked him up. I'm a Googler, and I looked up, like, oh my God, and I had to show my husband, and we liked his music, and we wanted to support him because he was going to do. I learned that he's going to have an American tour, in which he did, and I went, and one of the places was Atlanta. And I'm not sure how many places in the U.S. he went to, but it was just amazing to meet him. And it was just authentic. It was a small venue, one-on-one with everybody. And that's what's more important, I think, in a concert, is to be closer. I think that's why more bars are pushing that. And now Patrick is in... doing his Europe tour, but we got to meet the whole band, and he was just so kind. And I told him, I think I almost made him cry. I said, I told him I was happy what he was doing. I told him he's sharing, and his goal is to spread love, David. Okay. Mm-hmm. He said, And I told him he's being a good leader. He's sharing, being a good role model. And I think he cried when I told him that. I got a lot of hugs from all of them, but we
Good.
stayed after the concert, you know what I'm saying, in the venue and talked to everybody, whether, it was just, and we were joking about my French background and their French background. And that's really what it was. But I said, my mom wouldn't be able to understand you. And so I was joking. She's from the real France. That's what we were just being sarcastic, and they were laughing about that. But that was just, yeah. He told me, Jonathan said, you're pronouncing it wrong. It says Jonathan Wah. I was like, oh, I thought it was Roy because I'm American, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's just an example of just supporting. I like to support people like that. And their new guitarist is actually from France, and he moved to Quebec.
Nice.
And so he speaks really good English. So, and I said, I'm sorry, my French sucks, but but it was just, it's just something like that. And my husband, we'd been to that area, Quebec, for hockey for our son back in the day. And my husband grew up in Wisconsin, which is why he was into hockey. And I just think you got to find something that you like. He liked it and he was good at it and he tried different things. But then music, that's something that my husband is naturally good at, but he takes that for granted. I'm good at dancing and singing, not playing an instrument, right? But it's just something, again, trying something that while you're here, what you enjoy. And I've always liked to write and tell stories. And that's something that it was my sons. Isn't that amazing?
It's all their fault.
That did this. And that's probably because I was talking to them more than I realized. I read books to them all the time when they were young. And that's why I ingrained into them how important books were. And they're both into nature because their parents come out for hiking a lot. Right. And they're not 100% like us, but they're teaching me tech, right? Because we didn't have that, David,
nice.
Growing up.
Nice. So for Brigitte, for someone listening, they want to write a book, they want to share their story. They've been delaying it, putting it off. Similar to what you were saying, it's just like, well, I've got all the time in the world to do this. Well, really, we don't.
Right.
We really don't. So how would you encourage somebody if they were to come to your place, grab a cup of coffee and sit on the porch, watch the sunset, that type of thing? What would you say to them in that moment to encourage them to stop delaying because they have something they can share with the world? And again, even if one person buys it, great. But how would you encourage someone just to do the work, write the book? What would you say to them?
I would recommend that they write what they want to write about, not what people are recommending them to write. What they're going to be comfortable sharing. It could be fiction, right? It could be, whatever they want to do. And I would also, a lot of people are doing this now, recording themselves when they come up with ideas. And
Nice.
then you can later have it transcribed. I used to do that too when I was running. Well, thank God for phone. But you're like, oh, I have this idea. And you got to make sure you write down those, just journal a little bit, just notes, right? And then you just do have to make some time for it. And some people tell you to wake up at 5 a.m. No, I'm not going to write at 5 a.m., David. I want that. Everybody's different, but find a time for you to get those thoughts down and connect with somebody who has done that, gone through it. And then I like to mentor people on that. I was told I've always been that way, that I like to write. And I think it's okay if you have a story to share. I also think it doesn't have to just be ink on paper, right? You can podcast, you can tell stories that way, correct? And then you can turn that into a book, David. You really can. A lot of people, it was recommended to me, I have all these podcast episodes, I can transcribe them and create a book from it. And for those who want something physical. And that's why the print on demand has been helpful. Because people were afraid in the past, David, that you used to have a minimum print run. that's part of the reason it's still stuck in their heads
Yeah.
that you have to have get to print 100 copies or 1,000 copies, and so they wouldn't do it. But now you have the ability just to print one if you want,
Yeah.
and you can have the ability to just share your stories. And I'm one of those people. I've dabbled in fiction and nonfiction. You could be more creative with fiction.
Yeah.
And there's also creative nonfiction, which is a popular thing to do, which is kind of what I probably do. I throw in the sarcasm and when I'm writing, but be yourself. I would recommend to you can emulate somebody, read, definitely take time to read
Yeah.
because that will trigger ideas and your thoughts. And then when you have those, you've got to jot them down. And I had you, if I'm watching something, even on TV, like sometimes I watch, Jimmy Fallon, but something like that, for example, they'll have a guest on, they'll say something really cool. I'm like, I'll write that down as something I can follow up later because otherwise you'll forget it, especially in my chapter. but it's important to be you, read and just, I get ideas. I've learned, find an area, an environment where you're going to be able to do this work. It is work, but you have to make time for it. And you can try different times of the day if you want to write. You can be in different environments. I have to be alone because I will get distracted, right? If people are barking, but my dogs can lay next to me. but I'm just I just get an energy get great ideas from just a walk in the woods. I get great ideas. Then that's when that motivates me. Reading is what can inspire and motivate you as well. So everybody's a little different, but what do you want to write about? And then it doesn't have to be 1,000 words a day, right? Just a little bit. Could be 5 minutes, David.
Yeah.
And then if you want to record yourself, even better. So there's so many options now.
It's great. Yeah, the world is at our fingertips. We can reach people that we could never reach before. Things are different nowadays, and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of technology. There's some great ways you can connect.
Yes.
Here we are doing this right now, right? Years and years ago, this was probably a dream that, two people could do this together.
Oh, yeah, because of the back then, it was very cost prohibitive, too. I mean, that's what I think that scares people, too, is the cost. I truly think so, but it's now it's not, that's, again, when I mentioned about the books, you used to have to do a minimum quantity.
Yeah.
And to make it worth your while, but then some people couldn't afford it. And but that's the bonus. And I mentioned that in my book, the quality book formula. Print on demand quality is really good now. And you don't have to, spend a lot of money on that. I do recommend you get a little help. You need some feedback though, if you are going to publish something.
Right.
Have someone proofread it for you or edit it. Just want to make sure it makes sense to somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't be offended. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've had some feedback on some of my stuff, like, oh, I never thought about that. But you still have to get a different perspective. And I'm one of those people. I am willing to help people get their stories out there. And I recently had a quiz added to the homepage of my website, a storyteller quiz, because it's like, well, okay, you want to tell your story. What are you comfortable with? You take that quiz and you'll get an answer. I can't remember how many questions. I think it's 5 questions. But if you're going to be someone who wants to write, or someone who wants to speak, or someone who wants to be on some people love being on camera. So that's a good way to help motivate you to figure out the underlying motivations that you're not sure of. And so that's why I had this quiz created. I created it, but then I had to have someone put the tech together. I couldn't do it. But to get your answer, I'm sorry, you're going to have to give me your email address. But you know how it is. But it's a quiz, and you'll get the answers emailed to you.
Nice.
Answer of what you should focus on. And some people like it all. And I'm one of those people, David. I'm multifaceted, which is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
That's probably why I'm podcasting and writing and things like that.
Yeah, there's many crayons and coloring pencils in your kit, right? You don't just color with one color.
But that's me. And I do start, to me, a good way to start a foundation for people is to have some kind of book as a foundation. And then you can take it, and that's, again, I created a podcast, and then that book about my stepfather, there's an interest in creating a film for it. There really is. Yes, because it's so unique. And I had someone help me create the script a little bit. That's not something I played around with the script, but I need someone who's in that industry. I never thought in a million years, but I don't know if it's going to happen, but there's an interest in it because someone read it and they reached out to me and said, Brigitte, this would be a great feature film. I'm like, what are you talking about? I never thought about that because military movies out today are mostly about the violence.
Right.
What about the military guy's life at home? And that's kind of what they're at home. And that's kind of why my book stood out a little bit, I think. And I do joke in there that his special forces training came in handy managing me and my younger sister. I was 16. Come on now, David, right?
Come on now. Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't, even my real father was probably like, oh God. But I mean, but girls and just teens in general, but that's kind of why I put that humor in there. But he was really calm about it, but he still had to deal with war stuff that we didn't need. He needed some stability. That's what this is about. These military people, they need stability too at home. And I didn't respect it growing up because I didn't understand what my dad was doing. And I'm, again, very happy and fortunate. He came home from Vietnam. He was injured, but he came home alive. And then, my stepfather was in, you ever heard of the Grenada invasion? He was involved in. Oh, well, that's unbelievable stuff there. And then he was in the Gulf War. So, and he came home alive. So it's just, they need their family, right? That's kind of why I made it from that aspect.
Love it.
And sharing other stories from his military guys.
It's great. So Brigitte, we have the podcast we can listen to, and I love your show. It's amazing. You have great guests. I love what you do and how you do your show. So I want everyone to go listen to your podcast. That's the first thing I'm asking everyone to do, and we'll have a link to go right to your show, right from the notes. But as well, your website and everything. Where do we go? How do we connect with you? And where do we find all these amazing books?
It's go to my website, which is my name, BrigitteCutshall.com, and it's Brigitte. It's the French version, Cutshall, Cutshall.com. And there's a resources page where it'll take you, scroll down to where the books are available. There's also, for fun, I'm on Instagram, the same name, at BrigitteCutshall.com. And then for business-related stuff, I'm more professional on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't put bad stuff, but yeah, LinkedIn, I like to connect with people on LinkedIn too. That's a great way, especially if you want me to give you some advice on what to do next with the blog. And Instagram, I do post, that's where I post my podcast stuff and pictures of me running or my dogs and sunsets.
Nice.
Yeah,
they're all there. All of those
Correct.
are there.
That's what I was recommended to me to combine, not to have a separate Instagram account for my podcast. That's when I later merged it. It would be easier for people to know more about, because that's me. The podcast is all about me and my guests. But it makes it easier too on the podcast person to only have to deal with one Instagram.
Yeah, I know that. It's amazing. Well, Brigitte, thank you so much for doing this. I'm looking forward to, again, following your journey as an author and as a podcaster and a creative person. Thank you for making time for this. Thank you for sharing your story too about, the anniversary of your cancer and all that. That's a triumph. I hope you go out for a run to celebrate or do something, right?
On my 59th birthday, I'm going to do 5.9 miles. Not 59 miles, 5.9.
Yeah, 59. That's a much. Yeah. I love it. Thank you for being here, Brigitte. You're a great inspiration for us as we listen to your story. And I know there's people who are going to walk away from this conversation going, A, I need to have more Brigitte in my life, so I'm going to reach out. But B, there's some great content that you're putting in the world that help people. So thank you for doing that. That's very unselfish of you and very giving of you. Thank you for making our world better.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate what you're doing, and I love Canadians. They're so nice. You guys are.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Brigitte.
All right, bye.
Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end of the podcast. That's a big signal to all of the players, the YouTubes, the Apples, the Spotifys, that you found value in this episode of Living the Next Chapter. Just by you listening to the end, you just sent a huge bat signal out to the app saying this was a great podcast, a great conversation. So you listening to this point, you've done your job. I have one more ask of you. If you know anyone that would benefit from this conversation, would you share this episode with them? Would you just get on, send them a message, send them the episode, tell them about this episode, tell them to go livinginthenextchapter.com to get all the information about the podcast. Can you do that for me? Because the more people that hear this message, this episode, the better. I want to support these amazing authors. And I know you do as well. So sharing this episode really helps. And I appreciate you. See you on the next episode, and thank you for listening to Living the Next Chapter.